I've been playing a lot of Warrior in the War Within Alpha recently, and I've been having an incredible amount of fun with it. Like, just to skip to the end here, honestly, I think Warrior is my favorite class again, as far as the War Within stands. Now, we are coming off of a week where Brewmaster Monk was just violently nerfed, so, you know, maybe things will change as we get closer to the War Within coming along, but at least as it currently stands, looking at the entire class, I think I'm having more fun playing Warrior than I am anything else. Hi, it's Llarold, and I'm going to talk about Warrior in the War Within Alpha, but first, don't forget to like and subscribe. Alright, here's my important disclaimer here. I think it's crucial to talk about how the classes feel more than the numbers. Damage tuning is always the last thing that gets finalized in a beta, and, you know, ultimately, it's not really what you feel. Like, if I look at the current state of the game, I actually like the way that Prot Paladin feels. I just hate that I do like 45,000 DPS less damage than my co-tank. And, you know, that is kind of what I want to evaluate here. Does it feel good to play Warrior? And yes, it does. Now we should start with class changes to Warrior because there have been some, and they're actually quite substantial. First of all, Blizzard put out a blue post that was very frightening, very awful to read, that actually wound up not being so bad right at the start of the alpha. So one of the things that they said, just to kind of briefly summarize, one of their stated design goals was to slow down the class and to reduce the rage available to the class, make it slower, make it more methodical, basically make it less fun. I really can't put into like words that are usable in polite society how much I disliked reading all of that. It was not good. It's basically everything that I like about Warrior was stuff they said they wanted to remove. However, it hasn't really worked like that. Ultimately, it has been feeling pretty good. I actually think they've done a really good job with the redesign of the class and a really bad job with the messaging about the redesign of the class. So in terms of what they've actually done in the class tree is they've moved Shockwave up. They've gotten rid of it being a capstone talent entirely, and I think that's great. That really gives you more freedom down at the bottom of the tree to kind of negotiate, to deal, you know, basically to make more decisions with your talents instead of just being locked into a very set talent setup on the left-hand side. Now, there is a lot more stuff to pick up over here. There's also some stuff that's just been made baseline, like you don't have to talent to pick up Berserker Rage. Check this out. Boom, baseline Berserker Rage, finally, as it should be, as it always should have been. You still have to talent into Intervene, which I'm not thrilled about. So there has been some reworking to talents. There's been some stuff that is still stuck around, like Barbaric Training is still very, very bad for Prot Warrior. It's still 25% increased damage with Revenge for 50% more cost, still terrible. And, you know, there's definitely some stuff that you probably won't be using. Like, I think that these pass-throughs here, the Bounding Stride talent should probably be a pass-through, Rumbling Earth should probably be a pass-through, Bitter Immunity definitely should be. The fact that you're kind of locked into, like, these are just cul-de-sacs is kind of a mistake in my eyes. And also, getting to the bottom of the tree, getting to these talents that you want is actually pretty expensive. Like, it's actually pretty hard to get down to, like, pick up Champion Spear and then also actually come over and take Thunderous Roar, and Thunderous Roar no longer generates rage. Also, Thunderous Words, the talent that kind of made Thunderous Words so super good throughout all of Dragonflight because it gave you permanent bleed damage increase, now only applies while Thunderous Roar is active. So, in my mind, I think in most situations, Thunderous Roar might be dead, but that's okay because Champion Spear is still here and it still deals a lot of damage. It is pretty good. However, it did get a visual rework, and I think it looks like poop. And I don't mean that as like, it looks bad. I mean, like, let's throw it on the ground and look at this. This looks like poop. It looks like poop on the ground. So, maybe not the best visually, but I think that is something that you can fix by getting a glyph from Shadowlands to go back to the old Spear of Bastion visual. I haven't done that yet because I haven't been using Champion Spear in Dragonflight, but that probably is something I'm going to do on live servers fairly soon just to be prepared. In terms of the right-hand tree, there have been some class changes to Warrior on Dragonflight recently that have carried over, such as Battering Ram being pretty heavily nerfed and Enduring Alacrity being pretty heavily buffed, so that's all good. But maybe the most important thing, the biggest thing that has changed for Prot Warriors, and actually for all Warriors, is that they all get battle stance or berserker stance if you're Fury, and you also get defensive stance baseline. But as you can see, this thing that I've been asking for since it was quote-unquote accidentally added in the Dragonflight alpha for a week and then taken out has finally been given to Prot Warriors. Look at that tooltip. A defensive combat state that reduces all damage you take by 20%. That's it. There is no damage penalty for being in defensive stance. You just go into defensive stance and you take 20% less damage, and then you tank like a normal tank. I don't know why it took so long for them to get rid of that damage bonus, but thankfully they have sorted out defensive stance for Prot Warrior. It is no longer a mini defensive cooldown that you flick on and off. It is just something that you camp in all the time, and you can go into battle stance for the 3% more crit if you're like doing world quests, or if you're not actively tanking a boss and you really want to min-max your damage. Cool, but defensive stance being something that you permanently leave on as a Prot Warrior with no penalty is how it should have worked in the very beginning. You should have always stayed in defensive stance the whole time. And you know, here we are, finally. This is intended, they have said as much, and I think it is finally the beginning of things that indicate that Prot Warrior might actually have a real shot at legitimacy as a strong tank from the start of the War Within through to the end of the War Within. I know they love to nerf warriors, it's their favorite thing to do, but I actually think there is reason to hope in this coming expansion, and this is one reason why. Now, as for the other spec changes, I think Fury is the one that really feels the most changed to me, and that's probably because I just haven't played ARMS all that much since Legion, I think, was the last time that I really spent a ton of time playing ARMS. But Fury feels pretty changed because, as you can see, they've reworked the talent tree over here in the bottom right hand, or the bottom left hand side of the Fury Warrior tree. Just to flick over to a web browser here to show off the current state of the Fury Warrior tree, as you can see, it's 5 capstone talent paths, which is insane. It is too much. That is undeniable. That's way too much over here. And, you know, going back to the War Within alpha tree, now it's 4. I think that is still a lot to have 4 capstone avenues, but I think it's manageable at least. What's unfortunate here is that my favorite of these passive trees down here, Annihilator, the setup that would make it so that you auto attacked, basically sort of like Devastator for Prot Warrior, sort of like Demon Blades for Demon Hunter, where your auto attacks were imbued with extra damage and generating rage and kind of some passive bonuses, and it would change the whole playstyle. That has been removed, and I really don't like it. I have to say, playing around with Fury in some of the zones has been actually a little disappointing compared to how it is in Dragonflight. Now, I'm obviously going to give it another shake. I was planning to play the next zone as Fury Warrior and Arms Warrior, and hopefully it'll be a little bit more fun than it had been in the initial testing. But I have to say, I was actually a little disappointed to see Annihilator go, just because it was a playstyle that I really enjoyed so much, and instead they've really pivoted back toward pushing you toward playing with like Execute and Sudden Death, which I like for Fury, but they're not nearly as fun as they are for ARMS, I think. And then Raging Blow. Raging Blow really is the main emphasis, the main thrust of a lot of the state of Fury in the War Within. It's about Raging Blow, it's about Execute, and it is about Blade Storm, and that's all a little bit weird. ARMS has seen some lighter changes. For example, Reaping Swings has just been baked into Cleave. Valor and Victory has been doubled. Like, there's definitely have been some changes made to ARMS, but they aren't nearly as substantial as they were for Fury, with having Annihilator removed, or to Protection, which is having some very substantial changes to their damage reduction, which has all been pretty significantly improved. I'm okay with that. I really do think that playing around with ARMS, I've actually kind of fallen back in love with it. I've really enjoyed playing ARMS, and you know, I am definitely planning to play more of it. Like I said, I'm actually looking forward to it. Like, I kind of that's probably a thing I'm going to be doing as soon as I finish this video. All right, so now let's talk about the 3 hero specs. The first that I want to talk about is Slayer, and Slayer was initially billed, when they were kind of hyping it up before actually showing off the tree, as a very Execute-focused talent tree available to ARMS and Fury, and I thought that sounded pretty cool. And as you can see from the top talent, it definitely fits with that. Your attacks have a high chance to overwhelm your target's defenses and trigger a very small damage proc a Slayer Strike that then gives you increased damage on your next execute. And then you have some talents like Imminent Demise that increase the chance of sudden death proccing and make it so that when you use a sudden death, you get more damage on your next Blade Storm. And I guess, unfortunately, that really wound up being more the theme of the talent tree. It's very Blade Storm focused. Each strike of Blade Storm applies Overwhelmed to all enemies afflicted, making them take more damage from you. Then you have this talent here, Frenetic Flurry, Overpower for arms. I believe it's Bloodthirst. Maybe it's Raging Blow. Doesn't matter for Fury. One of your strikes for Fury gives you a chance to give a partial Blade Storm, striking all enemies around you for a lot of damage. You could still pummel and Stormbolt while Blade Storming. Let's see if I can get a proc on that just to kind of show it off. Might take a bit here. Here we go. Hey, there we go. All right, excellent. That is exactly what we're looking for. Yeah, like a weird little mini Blade Storm. It's neat. You know, I don't love the core concept though, unfortunately. As you can see, I'm getting some Slayer Strike procs, and that Overwhelmed is lasting for quite a while. Boom, lot of extra damage. So there's a lot of extra damage procs, and if you like Blade Storm, then awesome. You know, this is really, really great stuff for you. This is exactly what you're looking for. For me, I've always found Blade Storm to be a little kind of janky, to be honest, and having a tree that's built heavily around Blade Storm doesn't really thrill me as much as the idea of building around Execute did. And so, yeah, it's a little disappointing. With that being said, I do think there's still some really cool utility in here, like Vicious Agility, which I really like. It makes it so that casting Heroic Leap reduces the cooldown of charge. I'll charge to show it off, and then vice versa. I'll Heroic Leap, and then I'll charge again. Pretty cool, right? Yeah, I like that a lot. I like that a lot. And so, you know, there's definitely some good stuff in this tree. I'm definitely excited to play around with it more, and maybe I can bring myself around to actually really liking Blade Storm a lot. And if I do, then that would be great, because this tree does seem like it's pretty strong and it can be pretty good. It's just, you know, it is built around a talent that I've never really been in love with. All right, next I want to talk about the Mountain Thane, and Mountain Thane is a talent tree for Fury and Protection, and it has a very different feel for Fury than it does from Protection. I actually really enjoyed it as Fury, and for Protection, I didn't really think it was like, I thought it was thematically very cool, and I liked the idea a lot, and I was really hopeful that it would be good, but I was very pessimistic looking at it before I actually played around with it. And then once I got into the game and kind of played around with it some, I actually felt that it really exceeded my expectations and was a lot better than I had feared it would be. And that's optimal, right? That's exactly what you're looking for, is for stuff to actually be good. So what this does for both Fury and Protection is it makes it so that when you hit enemies with Thunderclap, Revenge, Raging Blow, and Execute, you have a chance to strike them with a Lightning Bolt, dealing a bunch of nature damage, and then your lightning strikes will occur more often during Avatar, and then it's basically a bunch of procs on top of that. You have some talents that can control those procs, things like Lightning Strikes, which, or Gathering Clouds, which will increase the proc rate of those lightning strikes, or talents like Thorum's Might that'll make them give you rage and also give you some passive damage bonuses. You know, a lot of really strong stuff in here, but it's all built around using Thunderclap. And that's pretty weird for Fury, except it actually works really well because, as you can see from this talent right here, Call of Thunder, it makes it so that Thunderclap becomes basically the Protection Warrior Thunderclap, even if you're playing as Fury. So as we can show off here, I'll run in and I'll Thunderclap, and instead of consuming a bunch of rage, it actually generated rage, and I think it triggered and Execute a sudden death proc, which is interesting. Maybe that was an auto attack as I was turning away. Either way, that is a real change of pace for Fury to be using Thunderclap, right? And basically what it does is it replaces Whirlwind. Like, there really is no reason to hit Whirlwind in this playstyle. You have Thunderclap, which deals massively more damage, and it interacts with all of the talents that affect Whirlwind. Things like, well, okay, there we go. Improved Whirlwind and Meat Cleaver, as we can look at my buffs up here. Those are being triggered by hitting Thunderclap, which you're basically hitting on cooldown. So what this kind of does is it kind of turns Fury slightly into a Protection Warrior. And that's different. I like the idea a lot, and I was really, really excited about the possibility of playing this as Fury, but I wasn't, I wasn't so sure about it as protection until I read the final line there, which I feel like I didn't miss that in the initial run up to the alpha, but maybe I did. Seismic reverberations works with your thunderclaps. What's interesting here is that previously in testing on training dummies, I was actually able to get this to make it so that when I would hit enemies with a thunderclap, the way it works, as you can see, written here, when you hit enemies with a thunderclap, revenge, raging blow, or execute, you have a 25% chance to strike one of them with a lightning bolt, dealing some damage and generating some rage. If you are talented into Thorum Smite, if you're talented in Gathering Clouds, then it's 30% more often, so it's about 33%. So, as it says, you're able to strike one of them with a lightning bolt. So whether you're fighting one enemy or 50, you're going to get one lightning bolt when lightning strikes procs. Now, because of the way that seismic reverberations works, which just to read it, if you hit 3 or more enemies with a whirlwind or a revenge or a thunderclap, thanks to Call of Thunder, you get a second hit that deals 30% damage. So not a huge damage bonus, 30% more damage on your thunderclap, your revenge, and your whirlwind, basically. Except previously in testing, sometimes when I would thunderclap, when I would revenge, I would hit and it would double hit and it would proc 2 lightning strikes. And so I would get 10 rage out of Thorum Smite. I would get 2 visual lightning strike procs occurring at the same time. But I've just spent the last 10 minutes hitting these dummies with revenge and with thunderclap, and I haven't been able to get a double proc since. So I think maybe it has been removed or changed in some way, or maybe I was just crazy before and it wasn't happening. Maybe I was just wrong. Either way, I think the idea here, the getting 30% more damage onto your thunderclaps from seismic reverberation, in addition to the 50% thunderclap damage bonus that you get out of Call of Thunder, is really, really good. Now, there are some things in this tree that I think are maybe a little bit misguided. Thunder Blast here, for example, makes it so that Shield Slam and Bloodthirst have a 35% chance to give you a Thunder Blast, which changes your next thunderclap into a spell damage hit, Thunder Blast. The problem with Thunder Blast is at present, it is, as you can see, 13,846 Storm Strike damage if I press it, 13,187 physical damage on Thunderclap. You get a bonus to your Storm Strike damage in here somewhere. Oh, here it is. Storm Strike and nature damage your abilities deal is increased by 5% and it ignores armor. So it's spell damage, which is great, but as you can see, not really a substantial damage increase. It's only the tiny bit of, basically no meaningful damage increase, and then it ignores armor. Not really that big of a bonus. There isn't any sort of rage generation coming off of that, added rage generation or cooldown reduction, or any sort of interactions at all that I think are interesting and fun. I think even just a very simple way to kind of make this fun and cool maybe would be, if I can just hit on this training dummy a bit here and get another Thunder Blast. I think something that would be kind of fun is if Thunder Blast was guaranteed to trigger a lightning strike, or maybe guaranteed to trigger 2 lightning strikes, or something like that would be really thematic and kind of fit into the class tree, this fantasy of being basically this lightning god, becoming Thor, but a dwarven Thor. I think another talent here that I'm not super thrilled about is Burst of Power. Lightning Strikes just have a 20% chance to make your next 2 Shield Slams or Bloodthirsts have no cooldowns, so that kind of feeds back into Thunder Blast, which is okay, but the problem is that Thunder Blast is not really that great. And yeah, I don't know. This is a very AoE focused tree, as we can see. And so getting this random proc of being able to just kind of hit Shield Slam multiple times in a row, I'm not totally thrilled with that. I'm also kind of fishing for a proc here to kind of show off how it feels, and I'm specifically trying to get a proc while I have Shield Slam on cooldown. I think that really would kind of emphasize what's kind of janky about this Thunder Blast, or this Burst of Power rather, is, okay, I just got Burst of Power to proc, and Shield Slam was on cooldown at the time, and that is kind of weird, to get a random Burst of Power proc while Shield Slam is on cooldown that makes it so your next 2 Shield Slams don't have a cooldown. I don't know, I think at the bare minimum it should probably reset Shield Slam's cooldown in addition to everything else, and I certainly would like to see that change made. I think something to make this feel a little bit more thematically interesting And again, it has procced, but Shield Slam is not available. I'm literally having to sit here and wait for it to come off a cooldown. And, you know, you can fish for Shield Slam resets. That's the whole thing with Prot Warrior. But it just doesn't quite work. And then the final talent in this tree is Avatar of the Storm. It is a passive. It makes it so that casting Avatar gives you 2 charges of Thunder Blast and resets the cooldown of Thunderclap. And then when Avatar is not active, your Lightning Strikes have a 10% chance to grant you Avatar for a whopping 4 seconds. So I spent a lot of time fishing for those Avatar procs, fishing for the double hits from Lightning Strike, and you know, I didn't really see a lot of Avatar procs. You don't really get a lot of Avatar procs. 10% chance. It's just not that high of a chance, considering that the proc rate on the Lightning Strikes just isn't super duper high. I mean, we can see here, I'm sitting here, I'm fishing for Avatar procs. I'm fishing for them. Are they gonna come? Probably not. Eventually, maybe. Let's see how long it takes to get an Avatar proc, genuinely. Taking a little while. I would like to see more done rotationally with the Thunder Blast. Maybe if Thunder Blasts didn't have a cooldown, that would be pretty cool. If they did something else, that would be pretty cool. There we go. Finally got an Avatar proc. Excellent. Great. And it's over already, because it's only 4 entire seconds. So I like the idea of casting Avatar giving you Thunder Blast and resetting the cooldown of Thunderclap. I think that's pretty nice. I do like that idea a lot. I just wish that Thunder Blast and Surge of Power kind of did more than just like extra damage for Thunder Blast and sort of a cooldown reduction or 0 cooldown, but then not resetting Shield Slam cooldown. Like at the bare minimum, I think if Bursts of Power reset Shield Slam and Bloodthirst cooldown instantly, I think that would be okay. So I found myself very underwhelmed by this tree in reading it initially, and then in actually playing with it, I thought it was a lot better than I anticipated, but still not perfect. Now let's talk about what is perfect, and it's the Colossus tree. I looked at this tree and I thought, this is a nightmare. This is going to be terrible. Everyone's going to hate this, including me. I hate it already. I haven't even played with it and I hate it to death. And then I got into the game and actually played with it, and I was completely wrong. All right, so let's just start off with the most basic aspect of the Colossus tree, the demolish skill itself. And as you can see, I'm hitting on a training dummy to stack up some buffs here, because I really want to kind of give a showcase of just how hard this hits. I'm only level 73 on this character, 437 item level, so very bad gear. So, you know, the character's not well geared, it's not high level, it's not going to be popping off for bajillions of damage, right? Well, let's take a look at it. So basically the way this works is it does 2 little hits and then a big bad hit at the end. And I really expected this to be like very inconvenient, like Fists of Fury, where you're stuck channeling for this long period of time. It is much more like I-Beam, or even faster than that, really. And it has some really good tech built into it as well, with the damage reduction and the stun and knockback immunity. But let's just go ahead and kind of show this off fully stacked up. So Avatar, Demoralizing Shout, and let's do it. 300,000 damage on a non-crit, with very bad gear, no sort of raid buffs or anything. I feel pretty good about that for a 45-second cooldown. And where I think this gets even better is basically the talent immediately below it. Colossal Might makes it so that when you Mortal Strike or Shield Slam, you get a stack of Colossal Might that stacks up to 5 times by default, but the final talent makes it so that it goes up to 10. And then it has some of the best tech I think I've ever seen. Very creative design from Blizzard. I really like this. If you would gain a stack of Colossal Might and you're already at max stacks, instead you reduce the cooldown by 2 seconds. So in practice, I have found that the cooldown was more in the range of 35 to 40 seconds, which is great. That is shorter. That is better. You also get this talent here, Precise Might, Mortal Strike, and Shield Slam crits give you 2 stacks of Colossal Might instead of 1, and I have tested that. It will give you 4 seconds of cooldown reduction instead of just 2. And that's pretty great. All right, let's see if we can get a crit. Pop a very cheap potion while we're doing it. Hey, there we go. That's like 1,000,000 damage in crits. Again, at level 73 in way below LFR gear. Feeling pretty good. This is like not even World Quest gear that I'm wearing right now, 437 item level. That's pretty good. And as I'm just going to kind of sit here and jackhammer shield slams into this guy and try and reduce this cooldown some more. Oh, don't fail me now, shield slam reset chance. Yeah, so, you know, I think that this has actually wound up really exceeding a lot of my expectations. See if we can get some more cooldown reduction. Boom, a crit, and we got 4 seconds of cooldown reduction off of that, and we're already back to popping off here. I do like to kind of have all of my cooldowns rolling at the same time if they're close to get those big hits, but I've really been impressed by how much damage this baseline skill does, and as you can see, it's actually pretty quick. I think everybody who was upset about this, which was basically everybody who read it initially without having had a chance to play it yet, really didn't like what they saw, this idea that you're going to be stuck channeling forever. It really brought back shades of the Legion Prot Warrior weapon, where you're stuck channeling a block for a long period of time. Made people think about Fists of Fury, a pretty widely disliked skill, if I do say so myself. But this really is like much higher quality than a lot of those, and despite some initial kind of janky animations for using a sword and board, now of course there's also some other really good stuff built into this tree, such as 1 against many, which gives you up to 25% more whirlwind, cleave, revenge, shockwave damage. Really, for prot, that really is just revenge damage, but for arms, the cleave and whirlwind damage is pretty cool. This talent right here that I guess is technically still not fully implemented, but 10% increased crit damage just across the board, and then 10% more crit block is also pretty interesting. No stranger to pain, 15% increase total ignore pain damage reduction, super strong. And then maybe my favorite, 5% increased damage, 5% less damage taken, and 5% size bigger. I'm actually a larger man than other male Tauren warriors hanging out that aren't Colossi. That's great. So I've really been impressed by the feel and the playstyle of Colossus. It really does build up into this very big and powerful burst of damage that you're able to layer into your multitude of other offensive cooldowns. And it deals a ton of damage. It also is actually a pretty powerful damage reduction cooldown, as you can see from this talent here at the bottom. The second half of Dominance of the Colossus makes it so that when you hit enemies with Demolish, they take 10% more damage from you and deal 10% less damage to you for up to 10 seconds, and the amount that they are both reduced by and take from you is based on the number of stacks of Colossal Might, that bonus that you get from hitting Shield Slam. So you're going to be hitting Shield Slam all the time, and basically always going to be getting, I mean, even in, like I've said, sub LFR gear, I am able to get 10 stacks of Shield Slam every single time and get cooldown reduction, in fact. So this will be very easy to guarantee that this is always 10% more damage and 10% less damage taken, unless there is some sort of intermission phase, some situation where you're just literally not able to attack. Maybe the start of a pull, for example. That would be about the only time where I think you wouldn't be able to really get any value out of this. And I think that's okay. You know, maybe the way that this works is that you would actually want to kind of use this not very like immediately off the rip in a pull, but like a few seconds into a pull, once you've had a chance to kind of build up some stacks, get a bunch of other cooldowns rolling. I think that could certainly be justifiable. But as you can see, it's a pretty big offensive and defensive cooldown. It's on a relatively short cooldown, about 45 seconds. It adds a ton of damage, and I do think it has actually greatly exceeded my expectations, which were admittedly very low, but I think that in conjunction with the rest of the tree, it's really good. I also think it looks super duper sick as arms, and I just kind of want to show that off. I just think the slamming stuff as arms looks great. And so let's make sure that we're spec'd to Colossus, which we're not. And then just kind of give this guy a little bit of that heat with the Demolish. Yeah, looks pretty sick. Gotta say, I'm a big fan of the way that this tree has come together. You know, everything that Blizzard had said they wanted to do with Warrior in this expansion so far, slowing it down, making it more methodical, reducing the amount of rage available, having this big channeled skill be a core component of at least one of the specs of the class, like, all sounded terrible. Hated all of it. But actually, I think it's worked really well. Definitely has exceeded my expectations in every possible way. So in conclusion, I think ultimately what Blizzard has gone for here is kind of a set of hero talents that fit different roles, different purposes. I think it's very clear that Colossus looks like the raid spec for Prot Warrior and for Arms Warrior, and Mountain Thane seems like the Mythic Plus spec for Prot Warrior and Fury Warrior, and then Slayer is kind of the fill-in-the-blank spec for the other two. Weirdly, I think it is probably the Mythic Plus spec for Arms and the raid spec for Fury, which is very strange that one hero spec could kind of fit that opposite roles for two different specs, but I do think that is kind of looking like the way it's going to shake out. Maybe Mountain Thane just winds up being better than Slayer for everything for Fury. Maybe it's the other way around. Maybe Slayer winds up being better than Mountain Thane. I certainly couldn't come down with any sort of conclusion yet on that. I think we've got a long way to go still in terms of in terms of the design of the classes and certainly the tuning, and then also like figuring out what is good based on what Blizzard has changed and made. But with all of that being said, I'm super excited about the State of Warrior going into the next expansion. It has really been a lot of fun, much more than I thought it would be, and I absolutely love it. I definitely feel like I'm back on the Warrior bandwagon, not that I ever left, but 19 years of Warrior here and looking like I'm gonna make it 20 going into the War Within. All right, that's it. Thanks for watching. Bye.